Hi there, water polo fans. I hope you're well and you're ready for an absolute treat this week because we have a massive guest on the show today. I've been trying really hard to prepare my notes for this show, like any other show, but frankly, I've struggled in that endeavour because I'm very excited to announce that this week's guest is the three-time Olympic gold medalist and the Olympic all-time women's top goal scorer, Maggie Steffens. She's the GOAT of our sport. She's the greatest female player of her generation. I'm so lucky that I get to sit down with her for an hour or so and talk it out. Just a quick reminder before we start that if you're enjoying these podcasts, please do give us a review on whatever platform you are listening on. And as a listener, you can claim 10% off your next order at wearwaterpolo.com using our discount code, which is podcast10. I really can't wait for this. I'm actually a bit nervous, but here it is. Here's my talk with Maggie Steffens. Maggie Steffens, welcome to the Total Waterpolo Podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a massive honour for us to have you. And I'm really, really excited, and we'll get straight on with it. I think where we will start, probably last week, your old team, Stanford, Go Card, won the NCAAs. Did you watch those games? And I guess, what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, no, I definitely watched those games. It was really exciting, especially because I have a lot of friends who are still in college and a lot of teammates. Of course, I went to Stanford. That was my alma mater. A lot of friends on that team and old teammates. So, a little bit biased. Of course, I was cheering for them, but I was also cheering for, UCLA has Maddie Messelman, USC with Paige Hochschild. UCI actually has my assistant coach, Dan Klatt, and then my teammate, Elise Williams, is now the coach there. So, to be honest, it was really fun to just cheer them on. And I really just wanted them to have a good tournament and have fun. But it was definitely nice to see the card at the end of the day in the pool. So yeah, I was able to watch the final live, but the other days I was traveling. So I was just following, to be honest, on our platform, 6-8 scores, and just like, how's everyone doing? What's going on? Give me all the details. And then when I got home to California, definitely streamed that game and was able to watch it live, which was really, really fun.
Fantastic. And did it make you miss your time at uni? I mean, you were very successful there. You won the national championship 3 times. Did it bring back some good memories?
Oh, definitely. For those who have never done NC2As, it really is probably one of the most unique experiences you will go through. I've been fortunate enough to, have played in an Olympic Games. I've played in European finals for your country professionally. I've played in Champions League finals, so to be able to compare it to NC2As is just so unique, because to me, I think the difference is with NC2As, there's even more pride there because this group you've been with for 4 years, and it's not like an Olympic team or a pro team where people kind of come in and out, or you're not with them all the time. Some people have jobs, some people are in school. With Stanford or Cal or USC, UCLA, wherever you are, you're with each other all the time. And you've grown together from 18 years old to 21, 22. And so to be able to finally get to the end of your season and really captivate all those memories and experiences you've been through representing your school, for me, I always felt really proud to wear the Stanford S. So watching it back kind of brings back all of those memories of your teammates and getting to play in an NC2As and how special that is, getting to represent your school, which to me is something that I'll never forget. So definitely brought back those memories, and wish I was still young enough to be there. But, I guess I had to move on at some point.
We do actually have a question or two in part 2 about your time at uni and maybe pro and a bit of a comparison. But we'll deal
Yeah.
with that. We'll deal with that later. I'm not going to totally break with the format of the podcast. So let's go back to maybe your early life, and a lot
Yeah.
of people will be interested in your upbringing and how that made you the player and the person you are today. When I researched and did some research, I found it absolutely staggering what a rich water polo heritage you have.
hmm
Do you want to explain to some of the listeners who may not be aware of your water polo background?
Yeah, for sure. So I definitely have it in my blood to be in water. There's no doubt about that. And I definitely have it in my blood to be competitive and to be on a team sport. My mom, Peggy Schnug, is 1 in 13. So she has 12 siblings. And they grew up in Northern California, so really close to where I actually grew up. And all of them swam. She had 4 brothers, so very girl heavy in the family. She had 4 brothers, and all of them played water polo. And most of those boys all of those boys played at Cal Berkeley. And one of them was an Olympian for the 1980 team for the men's water polo team. And then 2 others played on the national team as well. And then my mom swam, everyone else swam. My mom ended up being was also a cheerleader in high school. So kind of was less in the water polo route, more in the just simply athletic route. So my Schnug side of the family, my mom's side, Olympians, national team players, collegiate national champions, and then as well, all of them were swimmers. And they are very competitive. You can imagine growing up in a family of 13. You probably have to be competitive to just get the plate you want, like it is it's a full team. It's a water polo team, And then on my dad's side, so my dad's from Puerto Rico. So I'm Puerto Rican, and my dad played on the national team there, went to Pan American Games, Central American Games, and he actually ended up playing at Cal Berkeley as well. So you can probably figure out how my parents met. And he played at Cal Berkeley, was a national champion there, ended up playing on the U.S. national team for a little bit as well. And so just even from my parents, even though neither of them or my uncles, none of them pushed me at all or pushed our family to play water polo, but it just kind of was a natural attraction, I would guess, because we were always around it. So when we were younger, I used to go to Cal men's games and watch. And, even though I went to Stanford, I would have like Cal Bear stickers on my cheeks and blue and gold in my hair. So I got really familiar with the sport. And when growing up, I started swimming when I was about 2 years old. I wasn't good, obviously, but I was in the water going for it. And all of that was mainly because of my older siblings. So I'm the youngest of 4. Some people know, but probably more of the older community in water polo knows that my oldest sister, Jessica Steffens, is actually a 2-time Olympian. So she went to 2008 and won the silver. And then in 2012, we got to play together and we won gold. So she kind of started it all for us. So I have my oldest sister, Jessica Steffens, who obviously 2-time Olympic medalist, played at Stanford as well. And then my brother, Charlie Steffens, was a water polo player, played on the junior national teams, went to Cal Berkeley as well and played water polo there. And then my next sister, Teresa Steffens, went to Cal to play water polo, decided it wasn't for her, and kind of became our team cheerleader and best support system we could have. And then there's me. So pretty much growing up, I had a water polo team to look up to and learn from. We had a backyard pool with water polo balls, and it was pretty much my dad playing keep away with us, being creative. I think that's where we all learned our creative side was really from my dad. And then as my sister and brother got older, it would be like, hey, let's throw the water polo cage in the backyard and shoot on each other and just have fun, play volleyball with the water polo ball. So it just started to become second nature to us. And eventually a club team came to California, and we decided, let's give this water polo thing a real try. And that was with Maureen O'Toole, who is a silver medalist, one of the legends of women's water polo, one of the real frontiers to kind of bring women's water polo to the forefront of the sport. And so I was also really fortunate to have her as my coach and as my role model. I got to see an Olympian. I got to hold an Olympic silver medal when I was 8 years old. And so I think for me, the impossible at such a young age felt so real because of my dad and my mom and all of my 3 older siblings who would just beat me up and teach me how to be who I am, and to have Maureen O'Toole. So very fortunate with kind of my opportunities in the sport. And for those who probably remember this, there wasn't 12 and unders or 14 unders back in the day. It was just an 18 and under club. So when I started playing water polo with my older siblings, it was against an 18 and under co-ed teams. And I would get, just tried to keep up with everyone, but I wasn't really playing water polo. I was just there. But I think that was a huge part to kind of the journey that I've been on and where I am today as well.
Well, I mean, listeners take all of that in. I mean, your mum's one of 13. Your dad played, obviously, for Puerto Rico. And were you nearly a cow bear? You were brought up in bear territory? I mean, were you?
Definitely. I would say growing up, I'm from that area. I still love Cal. I love their culture. 2 of my siblings went there. Most of my mom's side of the family went there. I was pretty close to going to UCLA as well. Adam Krikorian, who everyone knows, was the coach there and had kind of created this very championship culture that who wouldn't want to be a part of that. So I was pretty close to going everywhere, but Stanford had my name all over it. It's definitely the school for me.
You mentioned that there wasn't under 12s, under 14s, under 16s.
Yeah.
There was under 18s. So
Yep.
How old were you when you started playing in those under 18 tournaments?
I don't know if I even was allowed to play in the tournaments. When I was 8, so like in 2000, 2001, which is when Mo started Diablo Water Polo, and there was just one team. So Jess, Charlie, not all of us started at the same time, but we all played for Diablo Water Polo Club. And yeah, I was 8. So I want to say when I was 10, we had a 12 and under team, and we went to a junior Olympics. I believe that one was in Florida. But from 8 to 10 in those summers, I was just playing with the 18 and under co-eds. And I'll never forget one time I got like my foot yanked back, and I was like, what is this sport? What's happening? And I was just a little puppy dog, similar to how I play now. I just have tons of energy. And I was like chasing, lost. These people were huge. But slowly but surely we got enough players to have a 12 and under team. But I don't know. Honestly, I couldn't tell you. Mo would be able to tell you, and my dad, but I would assume I wasn't allowed to play in tournaments. But from what I remember, I was always like on the bench, even at those tournaments. Because I think for Mo and my dad and whoever, because my dad was helping coach too, and Jim Purcell, it was like the more exposure they get, the better. Even if you're losing, even if you're failing every day, you're nearly drowning, that exposure to the sport, you're going to learn. And that's kind of where and I'm sure we'll get to this later, but that's kind of my mission now with what I'm doing, even with 6-8 Sports, is how do we create, and what Total Waterpolo is doing, right? Like creating more exposure for kids and for athletes. That's how you learn. That's how you get better. So yeah, I was a little grom on the bench. Like I did not start water polo good. I'll tell you that.
I'm just still trying to take in that you were 8 playing in under 18 mixed competitions. I mean, that's insane for me. I mean, there's no beating around the bush there. Obviously, you said you were like a little puppy dog in the pool, but you would have been a lot smaller. You would have been weaker, slower, all the rest of it. But was it kind of that exposure there that, you're very competitive, clearly. Was it kind of that exposure that you think maybe set the foundations for your drive and to push and to be better than everyone else?
Definitely. I mean, I say this a lot, and if you've probably heard any of my other podcasts, I tend to just talk about my family most of the time, because they're the ones who have built me. They're the ones who have structured my values and the drive that I have. Even the skill sets I have in water polo comes from my family, and even my water polo family, right? That includes my coaches. People who are basically, your second mom at that age or second dad are your water polo coaches. Even I played soccer and basketball, those coaches, you learn so much from them. And so for me, I am the youngest of 4 in my family. I mentioned my mom's one of 13. So you can do a little bit of some assumptions, but I have a lot of cousins, and I am one of the youngest of about 40 cousins. So I've always had older people around me who have done the sport or have been athletes. Like, even most of my cousins played water polo as well. At one point in time, we had like 13 people playing in high school. I was too young, but all playing either water polo or swimming or tennis, from just my cousins, just the Schnugs in the Bay Area. So I've always been playing up, in a sense.
Yep.
I've always had the role models around me to teach me how to do it. And whether that meant teaching in different ways, right? I had the older siblings and my older cousins and older players who were the ones who challenged me and pushed me. The ones who weren't necessarily like, hey, do this, everything's fine, but more of like, ooh, Maggie, I'm gonna beat you, and so I learned how to deal with failure at a really young age and loving it, like in that sense of a puppy dog. You see a puppy dog fall over and then they get back up, and you push them down, they get back up. And I think for me, that was probably one of the best values that the Steffens and Schnug families taught me, was you can fail and keep enjoying challenges as long as you just keep getting back up and competing and enjoying it. And so for me, I just kept taking that into my trainings. So when I was, as we mentioned earlier, started always playing up at 8 years old, I had my buddy Kelly Mendoza, who played at USC. She was kind of the one who always played with me, and she's a huge reason for who I am today as well. We kind of did everything together. And I carried that into high school. So, for example, my brother, Charlie Steffens, who's not an Olympian, but he probably could have been. And he was the one who I always tagged along with. So he would go to high school practices. It's probably a bit different in Europe and in other countries, but in the States, you'd have practice at 5 a.m. before high school. And I was in middle school. I was 12 or 13, and I would go with my brother. And I would go with my brother to his high school men's water polo practice, and I'd join them. And it didn't matter if they were 2 times my size, 3 times my body weight, 5 times my strength, probably 6 times my intelligence, right? But to me, that gave me the opportunity to learn from them, and I was okay with that. And I ended up in high school kind of taking that mindset as well, and I would always play with the high school boys. Every Wednesday night, I would go and play with a community college men's team and scrimmage with them. A lot of them were actually Europeans who had come to the States and using community college for a transition before they went to Cal or UCLA or wherever. And I learned to play with a men's ball. I learned how to play without suits. I learned to pretty much get beat up and just keep going. And I think for me, I'm not the biggest on the women's side, for sure. I'm not the tallest. I'm not the strongest. I'm not the fastest. But to look back and know that I was able to learn so many different skill sets of how to play against the strongest player, how to beat the fastest player, how to beat, or at least protect myself from these players who are much better than me in many different ways. And by doing that, I was able to develop a lot of skills as a smaller player myself now that I use actually in a lot of my game. When I watch men's water polo games, I probably play a bit even more to their style, because growing up, I just played with the boys, and that definitely was a reason, I felt more confident at a younger age when I would play against other girls. So without kind of my family pushing me and saying, come on, Maggie, like come with me to my men's high school practice, right? Or Jess wanting to get in the backyard pool and do a little extra swimming, or telling us that she wants to go to Stanford and exceed expectations of that Steffens name. So without my siblings kind of being that motivator and role model for me and my cousins, and eventually then these older water polo teams that I was a part of, I think I would have kind of just stayed here. I'm self-motivated for sure, but it was because of my older siblings and my older cousins. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be better than them. I wanted to chase, I idolized them. So I was constantly just trying to be around them, whether they liked it or not. I'm definitely the annoying youngest child. I'm sure they would say that. But that's how I learned. And that's definitely how I got better.
It's pretty clear to me that you had a number, and that number's pretty large, of family that were your role models and that were pushing you. And it's pretty clear to me that, although you said that, I think you said you played soccer or basketball, that it was water polo that you were destined to go the furthest with. So leading on from that, when if there was a stage in growing up playing water polo, in your water polo journey, as it were, did it occur to you that actually, instead of just this being something I really enjoy, that you could actually go further and maybe represent your country?
Yeah, so I'll never forget. My first love was definitely soccer, kind of to your point, and my idol was Mia Hamm, as probably every single girl in my era. So I wore number 9. That was my thing. I thought I was going to go to the Olympics for soccer. That was my dream, to be an Olympic soccer player.
Were you good at soccer?
I was pretty good. I got 3 state cups to my name, but I stopped playing around 13 or 14.
Sure.
So never really made it to that higher level, but as a kid. But yeah, my dream was to be an Olympic soccer player. And so that Olympic dream had been there since I was a kid. Like, I literally have photos of me from preschool saying I want to be an Olympian, and no idea that would be in water polo. It was all soccer. And so when I transitioned to water polo, I ended up making that choice because I realized I liked practice of water polo. Like in soccer, I started to only love games. And in water polo, I really loved training. And I think to me, and to probably most people, that was a good decision maker for me. Like, my passion for the sport was so high, even in the rough of times. And so once I transitioned to that, I realized, I think to me, that was my realization that this is my pathway, and I could have a greater journey in water polo than maybe in soccer. And I ended up making my first national team, and that's in the US. I didn't make like a top 13 or anything. It was like top 40 of my age group. I was 11 and it was like a 13U. So I was lucky to kind of play up. But we got 1 t-shirt, we got 1 USA swimsuit, and we got these black spandex and like a drawstring USA bag. And it was the best day of my life. I felt, it was the coolest thing. And, it seems so silly because obviously you don't make the team for that, but receiving those things and you get to wear it. And that's something my dad has always taught us. He's always talking to us about representing your name, the Steffens name. When you leave the house, you're not just representing yourself, you're representing the whole family. And so constantly in the back of your mind, how are you choosing to represent that family name, right? And so for me, now I had that USA name that I didn't know how to represent that. Like, that is way bigger than the Steffens name. And that was really exciting to me. I felt really honored, felt really humbled. There were girls there that, this sounds really silly, but I remember they could skip the ball. And I was like, oh my gosh, these are the best players in the whole world. They're probably 13, you know? And I was like, they can skip the ball? What? So I remember actually after that tournament, or after that tryout weekend, I went home and had my dad and siblings teach me how to skip the ball, because I was like, I got to be able to skip the ball if I want to play with these amazing players. But that, I would say, was probably when I got a little bit of the bug, just because I obviously wanted to be there before. I had the Olympic dream, but like we've talked about, that exposure to being around those top athletes, we got to go to where the national team was training, and you could kind of imagine it. That to me was a trigger point, like a fire under my butt type of moment. And then I think the real switch from just it being that, you know, the fire and the possible realization of it being true, to when I personally realized I think I could be an Olympian, and this was the path that no matter what, I'm going to fight to have, was when I went to the 2008 Beijing Games to watch my sister Jessica. That, hands down, being able to be there, feel, you know, I'm really close with my family, so being in the stands with them and watching Jess, like Jess is my idol. Everything she did, like I felt like I could feel her emotions. I felt like I was in the water with her. And so to have that exposure to the Olympics at such, I was 15 years old. I had done junior teams. I had tasted, you know, wearing the USA suit and playing international, but at a lower level. And to imagine myself in the water with my sister and see it, and I truly could feel what they were feeling. That to me was a moment where I said, this is it. This is where I want to go. And I'll never forget, after you might have heard the story, but after the gold medal game where USA lost to Holland, it was a crazy game. They were down by 5, ended up coming back, lost by 1, obviously devastating for the US. But I remember the whistle blew, and we were devastated, but also so happy that our sister had just won a silver medal. It's a really odd feeling. But I remember kind of sitting there and just staring at the pool, you know, and my dad and I kind of had this moment, and he looked at me and he said, now it's your turn. And
yeah, I've heard the story before, and it's like, it's so dramatic. It's like, now, you know, now it's your turn to, you know.
It gives you the chills, right? Like one, for my dad to have that belief in me. And I think that's something I'm really fortunate to have in my family, is they are my biggest challengers and they are my biggest believers. And I think that's really hard to have. And that's always what you want in your best coaches, right? You, in a water polo coach or in a sport coach, you want someone that's going to push you and challenge you, but they do it because they believe in you, and you know it. You can feel that they believe in you. And that gives you that little extra to overcome challenges. And to know that my dad believed in me in that moment, and kind of was like right here, you know, like he was right there with me mentally. And then the next summer, or a little bit after the next summer, I ended up making the senior team and got to play with my sister in the next Olympics. And I think if I had never had that moment, truly, I mean, I think I would have figured out a way to get there. But I think if I had never been able to watch Jess at the 2008 Olympics, if I hadn't been able to feel what they felt, if I hadn't watched them lose even, you know, if I hadn't had that moment with my dad, I don't know where I'd be right now, because that was such a critical part of this journey. And I have the chills talking about it right now, because I'm so grateful to have had that exposure. And I know how fortunate I am to have had those siblings and my parents and the Schnug side of my family to teach that to me, and to be able for me to just watch, you know, like people underestimating watching.
Yeah.
That is the best thing you can do. Just watch. And that moment for me was definitely the turn that said, okay, this is it. And that's where I picked it up in a sense, mentally, physically, emotionally, and fully dedicated myself to that Olympic dream.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're talking about it now. So you mentioned a year and a half after um, you then joined the team that you had seen, which obviously had your sister Jess in,
Yeah.
and in some ways, in every way, it was a really strong team.
Yeah.
Maybe some of your role models, one of which is your sister. Um, you were still in high school uh,
Hmm.
at that time. What's that like going into a team of
Oh
world
man.
class athletes and then
I
rocking up as a teenager? I've got homework to do during the break. All the rest of it, stuff like that. What was your first impression, and what was it like?
Oh man. I mean, my perspective on it, just so people understand, like that was over 10 years ago. More than it was 2010, 13 years ago. Um and so my perspective on it now is wow. Like the the fortune that I keep saying it, how grateful I am that I got to join that team. I got to join 2012, Brenda Villa, Heather Petrie, Lauren Wenger, Betsy Armstrong. I mean, those names are legends. And I was totally, similar to the puppy dog concept. Like, I just was excited to be there. I was like, tell me what you want me to do. I'm going to do it with full energy. I'm so young. I'm 15 years old. I'm just like zipping around. And, it's funny to talk with those teammates now because they're just like, oh, there's Maggie, like going 150% in this like simple thing. Like, calm down, take it easy, But my first impression was you're on the national team with these legends. And I wasn't on the team yet, right? I was just training with them. And I I mean, all I wanted to do was impress them. Of course I wanted to impress Adam, but you're on the team with them. You're in the water with those women. And I had their signatures, like I had watched them at the Olympics. These were people I had done camps with, they had taught me. So really, I was just nervous to impress them. You have Cammie Craig in set, like, oh my God, how do I guard her? Right? Like, she is probably one of the best centers of all time. And so that was kind of my first impression, was just do whatever you can to try to get them to like you, and like try not to make mistakes. And it's funny because that perspective, I think, helps me understand newer, younger players now, because I'm sure they're feeling the same way. And
How how does that inform when a young player comes into the team now? Because I don't think players are like this, but sometimes when younger players come in, they're challenging for your place. You want to
mhm.
right at the start, show them that what, I'm the centre forward, or I'm the starting keeper, and I'm not having some little puppy dog come in and tell me and make me look stupid in training. So
But that's what it is. That's why you have new players, right? Like, as much as I learned so much from those other girls, and like I said, I would just watch. And I was the type of player, and this is what I tell the kids I coach and work with now, is I like I mentioned with my family, just being around Charlie and Teresa, my sister, and Jess, I got better
yeah,
just because I was around them. And so for me, when I joined the national team, I found myself, you know, just going to the same cage as the people I wanted to be like, or swimming next to the person that I wanted to be like. And I wasn't necessarily saying that out loud, or maybe I wasn't doing it on purpose, but I knew that if I wanted to get better, I needed to be around the best. So that's another thing our family always talks about, is strive to be amongst the best. Doesn't mean you're going to be the best, but by being amongst the best, you're going to learn. You're going to get better. And so I did that. That was my thing. I would like follow Brenda Villa. I would swim next to Lauren Wenger, in defensive drills, I'd go next to Jess. So I would just surround myself with them. And now when I think about these younger players, as for me as a veteran, I hope that's what they're doing, right? Like, okay, you want to be one of the best shooters in the world? Go shoot next to Maddie Musselman. You want to be one of the best utility players? Go buy Rachel Fatal, right? And even if that means that they're challenging you for your spot, guess what? You're going to get better too. And after being on the team for 13, 14 years, that's good energy. I'm about it. Like, come bring that energy to me because I'm a little older. I've been around the block here, and if I could have some young player who's going to teach me a few things, I'll be around you, and it's super healthy. That's what a team is about. And that's definitely our culture on the US is, it's not, there's no like hierarchy or age or anything like that. It's, hey, we're all on the same team fighting for the same mission, and we can all learn from each other. So maybe they're learning experience from myself and Maddie and Rachel and Kaylee and Ashley Johnson, but we're learning things from them. They're bringing new tools to the game that maybe I hadn't thought of, right? And I think as long as they're bringing that puppy dog 180%, that's what we need. That's exactly what the team needs. So, as much as I'm sure my older teammates listening to this, like I for sure was, in the weight room, like, I don't know, not doing things right. Like I was just doing what I can to be a part of the team and be there, and copying what other people did. And, but you know what, as much as it probably was not necessarily perfect at every moment or the right thing to do, it was, helped me be who I am today. And luckily I had all the right people to copy and learn from. And I'm so grateful and lucky that I had them. So yeah, I'm excited for this summer. For example, we're going to have a lot of new players, and I hope they come fighting for positions that I play, because it's going to make our team a lot better.
Yeah. I mean, that was beautifully put, about the culture, about pushing each other, no hierarchy, all the rest of it. Let's talk about the Olympics then. And honestly, we could speak for hours and hours and hours about the Olympics, all three of them. That if you want to count the fourth one that you sat on the side and watched. But I guess we should talk about London to start with, not least because it's my hometown, but also because it was your first Olympics. Your first Olympic experience, and it probably started the love affair that you and the national team of America have had. You were a teenager in going to those games, and I think it's fair to say the US national team had a bit of pressure on them. You had a slightly different pressure. Their pressure was, actually, we still haven't got this all-important gold, whereas you were young, you were on the block, you needed to find a way to support them. You've mentioned about the squad, Heather Petrie, Melissa Seidemann, Brenda Villa, your sister, Cammy Craig. I mean, like, you have to find a way to fit in and support them. And so you just decided in your first Olympic match to score 7 goals, which is still a record for a single game at the Olympics. Do you want to kind of, what did you have for breakfast that day? Or was it like...
No, I mean, gosh, I think that's probably it's not my favorite game, but before that game was probably one of my favorite all-time Olympic memories. I think you said it really well. The pressure that I felt was much different than the older girls. And I think similar to kind of what I was saying earlier is I was there. I watched 2008 and my sister was on the team. So I even it's not just like I'm a fan, my heart was in it, And so I remember heading into the Olympics and the respect that I had and obviously still have for all of those girls pushed me. And a lot of my mindset and the younger girls' mindset, mentioned Mel Seidemann, who, by the way, probably one of the best all-time players. And so lucky that I got to do this entire journey with her. And that'll have to be like another whole podcast. But we wanted to make sure that never happened to those girls again. the respect and genuine love. And that's not like best friend love, right? This is like those women, we went through hell together. It wasn't all perfect, but we figured out how to become the team we needed to be through respect, trust, and love. And by the time we got to the Olympics, I know for myself and Mel and Tamua, Courtney Mathewson, we wanted to make sure that they never felt that way again, that they never had to go through the pain that they felt in 2008. And especially me, for my sister. And so for me, the pressure was different. We were fighting for them. Like you said, that kind of support role. And that's what we wanted. And those older girls, now looking back, I guarantee you, if I did an interview after the Olympics, I was 18, 19. Like I'm just playing water polo. I'm not thinking big picture. I'm just like, get me to the pool. I want to win. I want to do this for my team. Like I'm not thinking about what Brenda was thinking about or Cammie was thinking about or my sister. They were the ones who were carrying the pressure. Those veterans from 2008, they were carrying the pressure of media, of expectations, of their past. And guess what? Because they were doing that and they were doing it so well, and as the great leaders that they were and are, that allowed myself, Mel, Courtney, Tamua, Annika, to play, to not feel it, and to just be at the Olympics and enjoy it. And so for me as a veteran now, that's something I always try to do for our younger players, is carry that pressure, carry that burden, so that our younger players can enjoy the Olympics and be themselves, be free, And I'm getting the chills because I truly believe that without those leaders and the way that they carried that burden for us, I wouldn't have been able to play the way I did in London and not think. And I think for me, that's what happened in that first game, to be quite honest. I'll never forget, we were walking out of the tunnel. London was, one of the best pools we've played in, the atmosphere, the way it was built for water polo. And we walked out of the tunnel. I'm freaking out. It's my first Olympic game. I'm just shaking, trying to act cool. We're walking next to Hungary. They all look huge and I'm freaking out. And you could just hear the crowd, USA, USA, USA. And I felt like I was going to throw up. Like all the emotions we're standing on the, where the refs walk and everything. And they're calling out Maggie Steffens, number 6. And I'm surprised I didn't faint. I was not okay. I was just like so much adrenaline running through me because this is it. This is the moment. You've been training. Like I mentioned, I've been dreaming of the Olympics, not just as water polo, but as a soccer player since I was a kid. And then I had been training through high school. I had sacrificed so much to be able to give this journey a real try. And now we were here. And I'll never, ever forget. And this is why I said, I think this is one of my favorite water polo memories of all time, is we walked off and our team always does a circle after. And this allows us to, be with one another, be strong, touch each other, feel that unity that we have. And I swear it was truly a Michael Jordan moment where it was so much chaos. And the second that our circle closed, at least for me, it felt silent. And I'll never forget, Adam, looked around at all of us, and he loves eye contact. So, that's his thing. And he looked around at all of us and didn't say anything. And all of us then kind of just like copied him. And we were all just looking around each other and nodding at each other and making eye contact. And he said, and not necessarily word for word, but he said, now you're here. We're here. Now let's just go play. And I think to me, that's exactly what I needed to hear. And that feeling of strength and trust in that circle, in that moment, to just shut the whole world out and say, this is about our team. This is about us, our moment. And now we just go play. We were able to trust in our preparation. And I think that's kind of who I am, the way I prepare is how I play. And so I could trust in my preparation, and our team is exactly the same. The way we prepare is the way we would play in a gold medal Olympic game. And so by the time I jumped in the pool, the whistle blew. I don't remember a thing. Like, blacked out. Don't remember anything. And that's not the player I am. I'm a little psycho. Like, after a game, I remember every play. I'm always talking to, for example, Kylie Nuschel is the same. She can remember everything. She's one of the most intelligent players I've been able to play with. And we remember every little detail. And after this game, I don't remember a thing. I couldn't tell you how many goals I scored. It was just full zone. And I watched it back, and no one knew me. Everyone was like, go press Brenda, go press Lauren, like, watch out for Mel Seidemann, watch out for Cammie Craig. And then I was just like, all right, cool. I'm over here, So looking back, I was really fortunate, and I just decided, hey, I'll take advantage of what's happening. And luckily, my teammates just took the pressure off of me and let me enjoy it, kind of like Adam said, now let's just go play. So I always am searching for that again. I'm like, how do I just like tune out the whole world, and get into the flow zone? And that's constantly what you're looking for as elite athletes. And that was really unique experience to have that at your first Olympic Games.
I'm not going to lie. When you were telling the story about the huddle and you said, now we play, I was shivering, it was. And you said you didn't know how many goals you scored, but I mean, you scored 21 goals and you only took 27 shots. I mean, so you only missed 6 shots. And I mean, I missed that many every game I play. And that
wasn't normal for me either. Like,
you set the standard. I mean, you set the bar pretty high to start off with.
Yeah, but that, like, I think that's kind of what was so interesting about the Olympics. I'll never forget, we had World League Super Final before that, and I scored 11 goals in the tournament. And after that tournament, I was like, whoa, that's a lot of goals. 11. Because I usually score maybe one a game, like, I was still finding my way and finding my place. And so that's not normal. Like, it's not like I came into the Olympics a goal scorer on the national team. So that was an interesting experience for me as well.
Are you saying you basically fluked the Olympics?
No, I mean, I think that was something that I had to think about going into Rio, and I think I backed it up pretty well. So
yeah, of course. And look, without meaning to brush over a lot of the stuff, what did it finally feel like standing on the platform, the podium with that medal hanging around your neck, obviously with your sister and with your, in quotation marks, your other family, people you'd seen suffer, not to be too dramatic, but suffer 4 years before. What was that like?
Oh, man. I mean, whenever I just try to put myself back in that moment, I have this weird feeling of joy and tears, because in that moment, when you put that medal on, it's like you can finally breathe. Because the whole time leading up to that moment, it's almost like you're holding your breath, because you have this dream, you have this goal with these women, these empowering, strong, independent women, and you're doing everything you can to achieve that dream together. And so when that medal gets put on you, it's almost like all those memories you have flash before your eyes, and that's tears, joy, frustration, like every emotion hits you in one moment. And then you just kind of breathe, like it just comes out. And I think that's what I'll always remember is it really was an encompass of our whole journey. And people talk about that all the time, right? It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And you almost don't notice that until it's done, right? Until the destination is there, then it's easier to reflect and be grateful and see the entire journey. And so for me, that's kind of what that moment really was this joy of knowing that I got to play and be a part of this family. And then to look down, Jess is 8. So we were only one person apart, Courtney Mathewson between us. And we looked at each other. Yeah, Jess and I kind of looked at each other, And it was this moment of, Jess has this face that she makes when she's like really proud and happy. It's similar to a face my dad makes. And that moment when we got to look at each other was probably my favorite moment I had that entire Olympics. And right after we looked at each other, without saying anything, we both found our family in the stands, like at that same moment. And it was really, it was a really special moment to be able to look at our family and say, this is yours, and there are so many people behind each medal at the Olympics, even in individual sports, people you don't see. You have the coaches, the trainers, then you have the friends and family who supported you, and so to be able in that moment to share that with them as sisters. And like I mentioned, we talk about representing the Steffens name and representing it to the best of our ability. And so to be able to stand on an Olympic gold podium and represent that Steffens name together was something that, truly is one of the best moments that I'll ever probably have.
You said that it was lovely that you could see your family. That's obviously not something that you could do come Tokyo, unfortunately.
Yeah. Very different.
I'm saying I'm not. I am going to jump over Rio. Although you can say something very briefly on it. There was a pressure to retain the title. Yes.
Yeah. I think Rio for me was the main difference was I no longer was that younger one who could feel free. And like I said, I didn't think about anything else. I just thought about water polo and the team. I wasn't stressed or felt pressure other than to perform. And in Rio, I was captain. And so that was a much different role than I had in London. And, coming from a team family, coming from a team Schnug family, team is the most important thing to me. Always. The team always wins. And so to have the fortunate opportunity to be a captain at an Olympics brought a lot of different emotions and responsibilities. And so I think for me, that was a big motivator for me, was just do whatever you can to help this team be successful and fill whatever role is needed to make sure we achieve, our dream and our goal. And I was able to kind of focus on what my sister and the other leaders of 2012 did for me. I wanted to do for those girls that came in Rio. So I was really fortunate, though. You look at the people that came in. We had Ashley Johnson and Kylie Nuschel, who probably are two of the best all-time players. Kylie, I think, is probably one of my favorite players to play with. Probably my number one. We have a lot of history. And then Maddie Musselman. We had the Fisher sisters. So I would probably say Rio is the most talented team I've ever been a part of. And my statement kind of for Rio was, we were just having fun. Yeah. Like when you watch that team play, water polo looked fun. Like you wanted to be a part of that team. And so I just feel really lucky that I was able to be one of the leaders. For example, Mel Seidemann is kind of always captain all the time as well. We had Courtney Matthewson and Cammie Craig, who were our true captains in terms of experience and veterans and bringing the calm to the storm. So we had the perfect mix of people to bring energy and talent to the team. And then you had the Cammie and Courtneys, who you see it in the biggest moments. They were the ones to step up and say, everything's okay. We've got this. That is Courtney Matthewson and Cammie Craig to a T. And, me and Mel kind of in that middle range. So we just had the perfect mock-up to show what water polo could look like and how fun it could be.
Yeah, definitely a really talented team, really well-balanced team. And I know that the results don't always tally with and reflect the games, but it did look all very straightforward. And maybe that was because you guys were having so much fun. Tokyo. Now, this was a special one. It was special. It was obviously unique anyway. for you personally, a bit of legacy for you, the
Yeah.
all-time top goal scorer. Now, you said earlier about the World League before London 2012. You know, you were hyping yourself up for 11 goals after a tournament. Could you have ever believed that? I mean, all being well, you'll have at least another Olympic cycle.
God willing.
You will probably stay at least in the top 5 all-time goal scorers, probably in the top 3. I mean, you never know. Could you have imagined that before even getting in and touching a ball at the Olympics?
No, definitely not. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am a dreamer. That's Mel Seideman's, slogan for me is Maggie's a dreamer. Whether it's, absurd to have certain dreams or not, that's just who I am. I'm really positive and, I'm always believing in our group, in our team. And so in a sense, anything is possible. I believe in that, but definitely never thought that I would be on that list. Like I said, heading into London, 11 goals was amazing. Like I thought I would never do better than that. So, for me, definitely wasn't on my list. And that's not something that you really think about or talk about, right? Like you don't play a game. You don't play the sport for any individual accolades. And that's why I'm on team sports. I come from 40 plus cousins, my Steffens family of 3 older siblings. Like being an individual just means you have a part of a bigger team. You are one small player within that greater purpose. And so that's kind of how I've always played and always thought. So you don't even think of that. You think of how am I going to help this team achieve our goal? How do we get to that gold medal game? How do we be the best team we can be? So that never really crossed my mind, but it was a cool byproduct, I guess, of the years. And I didn't even know that I was like up for that. Like I said, you don't think about that stuff. And then when I was it wasn't until I did an interview a month before the Olympics and for some media channel, and they brought it up, and I just started laughing. I was like, what? Like I had no idea, and nor is that my purpose,
Sure,
know?
of course.
So it was really cool. And although our team, like I mentioned, myself, we're not like that. Our team isn't like that. I do appreciate after the game that it did happen. It was cool. Adam we did probably a 3-second quick recognition of it, which I was really grateful for, because that is a moment that'll, never happen again. And, so that was really cool to feel that, even though none of us are thinking that way, and you guarantee Ashley Johnson's not going into a tournament thinking, I'm going to be the best goalkeeper. No, she's thinking, I'm going to do whatever I can to stop this ball. And I think that's what our team does a really cool job in. So yeah, it was definitely a surprise to me, but it's really amazing. I'm really grateful for it. I'm pretty humbled that the people that are up there are people I look up to. I mean, Tanya is one of the best players of all time. She's somebody who I think her and Brenda changed the game in terms of intelligence. And they showed people you don't have to be 6 foot tall to be the best. And that was something that if I didn't have them, being the size I am, I'm not small, but I'm not big. They changed the game. So to be up there with legends of the sport is pretty humbling for sure.
Obviously, I've spoken to her. Maddie was probably in that team talk, and she might be your closest. I know she won't be thinking like this, but she might be your competition to top you off.
And I hope Maddie Maddie is really special. And like I mentioned in Rio, I mean, I think that was really cool for me to watch. Like she kind of reminded me of me in London. Like she just played and you could see it. For such a young player to have so much confidence and calm in those moments was something that for me, it was almost like I was watching a movie. I was like, holy moly, Maddie Musselman, here she goes, and I was just lucky to be a part of it and be with her, and then has only excelled that and continues to exceed expectations. So I mean, I look forward to see what she does next, and hopefully she's number one anytime soon.
You and me both. Really looking forward to that. The only other thing I want to really say about Tokyo, I was going to maybe bring up the Hungary defeat, but I probably won't. But you said earlier that water polo is in your blood. That's true, and a significant amount of that blood was spilt when you played China, I believe, when you got whacked in the face. Now, I don't remember seeing it. I don't remember seeing it until a few weeks after I saw a photo, and I thought, well, hang on, I've been writing match reports here. I completely missed that. What actually happened, or do you not want to bring it up?
No, I mean, honestly, it's water polo, right? It's a tough sport. And I don't think anything happened on purpose. The China Center, I went to crash and get a steal, and the China Center kind of was throwing her arms back, and she got me right in the nose and broke my nose, and lots of blood everywhere. And I just remember being like, why is the game stopped? Like, also, she just hit me. Because in the game, you're not like, that was unintentional. You're just like, I broke my nose, like, and I just wanted to keep playing. And like, I knew I had blood, but I kind of just was like putting water and like, come on, like, let's play. And I remember Ashley Johnson kind of like tapped my back, like really, really nicely. And she just goes, Maggie, I think you need to get out.
Yeah.
Like really calm. And, obviously I was in a lot of pain, but and Aria was the same because she's really intense. She was like, just let her play, and obviously I was just gushing blood, and we ended up fixing it kind of in the game, but it just was a bummer because, with the broken nose, it just kept going. So anytime I got back in, I had to go out. And I think for me, I just hate not being a part of it. And I had to have my back turned to the game in order for them to put stuff in my nose and try to fix it.
Just looking over, but,
Yeah, no, and I felt a lot of pride for my team because after that happened, we're already in the Olympics. You have one less sub, and so if I'm not able to play, that's one less sub. And they went on a 3-0 run right after that happened, and nothing happened intentionally. Truly, you even watch it, and she's just playing water polo, and unfortunately, I caught myself in a bad spot. And to know that after something like that, your team goes on a 3-0 run, that was really cool for me to like feel that the energy, the love that I had for those women in that moment was really, I really admired them. I really admired my team in that game. It definitely wasn't our best game. I wouldn't say we played our very best, but our heart really showed. And, I would say not mine, my teammates' hearts really showed. And that was really special. And I had been dealing, heading into this Olympics, and not a lot of people, my teammates know this, but I have been dealing with injuries, and I didn't know if I would make it to the Olympics. Like I had to take a month off before World League Super Final to even just be able to pass and shoot a ball. And I had a lot of emotions going into Tokyo, obviously because of COVID and everything, but mainly because of I was holding my body together like a string. And my trainer Larnie is an angel sent from heaven, and she kept me together, and we did everything we could. Heading into the Olympics, I really didn't know what I was going to be able to give. But when it's the Olympics, you do whatever, no matter what. And so, I didn't know if I was going to be able to shoot from the outside or what that might look like. And so I had kind of been dealing with how to work through injuries and those emotions that come with it. As much as you don't want them to come, it's going to happen. You're going to feel things or whatnot. And so in the second game of the Olympics, to break your nose and not be able to play for a little bit and have all those emotions hit after everything kind of I had been through on a personal journey to even just make it to the Olympics. And people you don't talk about that. You don't talk about injuries, before the Olympics, but it was really mentally, that was probably the toughest road I had been through, and moments where I thought, am I done? Like I can't play. And so that I think was almost harder for me after that second game of just dealing with, okay, well, here's just another thing. Just add it to the plate, and unfortunately, we played Hungary right after, and I wouldn't say it was my best game or our team's best game either, but it was probably exactly what we needed to get to the end, to kind of fire ourselves up a little bit and play better. We weren't playing – unlike Rio, I don't think our first 3 games we as a team were having fun. We were playing. We had a lot of expectations on us. And I think finally after that loss, to be honest, a lot of people on our team and our team was able to feel like, okay, just play and have fun, and you could see that transition. But that China game was rough, kind of more for me in that sense of not being able to play, but was able to feel the heart of our team and just kind of dealing with, okay, add it to the plate. Here's another thing to throw at me. You're only going to make me stronger, So definitely never broken my nose in water polo after 20 years of playing. So it was a first.
There you are. 4-time Olympian, potentially. Paris is just on the horizon. In one word, how would you describe what we can expect from you and or the USA national team in Paris?
Ooh, one word.
Or like 3. You can.
You're talking to someone who talks a lot, clearly. So I'm gonna keep it to one word. Sticking to the theme, I'm gonna say joy. Because, yeah, I'm gonna stick to one word.
Yeah, there we are. Joy. Okay, well, let's move away from Olympics and the national team. Let's talk about your professional career.
Yep.
Now, you've played in Europe for several seasons now, but back in January 2018, for a short spell, you joined UVSE in Budapest. How did this transfer come about, and why did you choose UVSE, and what can you tell us about your time playing in Hungary?
Yeah, so I, didn't really know what that next part of that water polo journey looked like. I didn't think I would go abroad. I knew a lot of players before me had done it when I was younger, and it always looked really cool. But for example, my sister didn't do it, and I do everything my sister does. So I was like, oh, I won't go abroad just like her. And then I thought, wait, no, I'm definitely going to go take advantage of this opportunity. And they reached out to me, I don't know, probably in the fall. And I was actually getting my master's at Stanford in management and engineering. And so I knew that I didn't want to leave Stanford during the fall. So I knew I wouldn't be able to do a whole season. And after kind of talking to a few other teams, in different countries, and talking to my family a lot, I decided that Hungary was the place I wanted to go. And I'll tell you why. In that moment of my life, I was just about to turn 25, or I was 24, about to turn 25, I think, the next year or something. And I knew that I needed a challenge. I knew that I needed something different. And I don't know Hungarian. I've never been there for a long period of time. I don't know the culture. I'm not comfortable there at all. Whereas, for example, I'm Puerto Rican. I am comfortable kind of in that Spanish culture or in the Mediterranean culture, Latin culture, even with like if I were to go to Italy or somewhere like that. And Hungary is the hub of water polo. It is truly, Margaret Island to me is like the heartbeat of water polo. There's so much history there. They love it. It's a part of their culture. And so for me at that age where it's after my second Olympics, it's after NC2As, I am getting my master's. I needed something to really challenge me and put me in a position where I knew I would grow. Not that I wouldn't in those other places, but I think I would have been more comfortable. Whereas in Hungary, I don't know the language, like I don't know anything. And I know it's going to be really hard. I know they train really hard. I know they have the best players in the world. And so I said, you know what? This is the challenge that I want to take. And this is the place I want to be at 25 years old. I want to be in the heartbeat of water polo. I want to feel that. I want to be around legends of the sport. I want to be around future legends of the sport like Rita Castelli. I wanted to be around that. And I knew that I would learn because I needed something. I was like, I need something to change my game. I need to be around people that are going to like challenge me and mentally, physically, emotionally. So I ended up choosing that club for that reason. But I would say, especially to play with Rita, I totally have like a athlete crush on her as a competitor. And, to play on Margaret Island, I think after 2017, we got to play Worlds there. And that was probably one of the most amazing water polo experiences I had had in terms of an environment. And so I wanted to be there. I wanted to be on Margaret Island, and I wanted to play with the people on that team. And the coach was also awesome. So to me, that kind of all of that coming together, decided to go play there. And I loved it. I had a really, really positive experience. I think I improved in a lot of different ways. They challenged me to look at water polo in a different perspective. Like I talked about, as a kid, I tend to follow the best players and learn from them and watch. And so, I would go to Rita's cage and hang out with her in the pool as much as possible and ask her like, hey, how do you do this shot? She's probably the most creative, best shooters in not just women's water polo, but in both men and women. Probably at least in the time I've been playing, which has been a long time. And so I just tried to watch her and ask her questions. And it was really fun to play with her. I mentioned Kylie Neuschel is probably one of my all-time favorites. Jess, obviously you can't beat that, but Rita is pretty high up there and one of my favorite people to play with. So I loved it, had a great experience, went my first time to Champions League. Unfortunately I had been sick, so it kind of came into that, off of 4 week of bed rest, which wasn't as fun as I wanted, but Champions League, we got fourth, which was really cool to be in that environment, and then won the Hungarian League. I had never done playoffs in Europe, and to be in that, like there's horns and drums, like you don't get that in the US. You don't get that. And so I got so into it. I was like, I'm about this. So yeah, I had a really enjoyable time there. It was really cool as well to have Tibor Benedict as the director of sport. And so I mean, for me, he had won 3 gold medals and somebody who had changed the game of water polo. And I would try to meet with him as much as possible. And one thing that I think is really cool about him, and obviously, I didn't know that was kind of his last couple years. But all he wanted to do at that point in his life was learn. And I had no idea what was going on, but he would ask me about how the U.S. Teaches kids and how they develop kids, or what we do for the college system. And I know he was doing that with Rita and other people. Like all he wanted to do was learn. And I just remember thinking, wow, here is a 3-time Olympic gold medalist, legend of the sport, especially in Hungary, famous. And he's asking all of these young female athletes how to get better. And that was, for me, like another role model that I never knew I needed. And I'm really, really grateful for my time with him as well at UVSE.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful story, and maybe an aspect that lots of people didn't know about Tibor. But from the sounds of it, on the whole, it was a really good educational experience for you.
Loved it.
Of European EuroLeague or Champions League, and the passion of the crowds and stuff. You obviously, you may have had the opportunity to stay on, but you opted to join Sabadell later in the summer, which is now basically your second home. It's certainly a home from home, really. You mentioned it earlier. You're really comfortable around like that Latin, Spanish kind of environment. I'm sure your dad taught you all the Spanish that you needed to know. before you left. But you're loved there. You've helped the club really build into being a powerhouse in club water polo, certainly in Europe, but and a massive brand around the world. It seems like the players at Sabadell are a really close knit bunch. I think I'm right when I say that.
Yeah.
What's it like playing with? I mean, it's like Sabadell is like I view it as like it's like the pro reco of the women's game. It's like superstars. Like get the 13 best players in the world, put them in a team, and that's what Sabadell has been basically. What's it been like to be part of that?
Yeah, I mean, similarly with UVSE, I've been really lucky at the clubs I've been to, let's just say. And UVSE is also probably one of the top clubs. It's really professionally run. You feel like a professional athlete. There's a lot of support. And for me, I will say it was really, really difficult to leave. I come from an American culture where, like I've mentioned, team is everything. Out of the pool and in the pool. You go to one college for 4 years, you don't leave. So this whole professional concept where, like, as a foreigner, it's like a business deal where you can leave and change clubs was really uncomfortable for me. Like I cried. Like I really didn't want to leave. Especially I had created really good friendships and relationships on UVSE. But what my decision was based off of was actually not on water polo, which might sound surprising. But, being Puerto Rican and thinking about my future endeavors in business and outside of water polo, learning the Spanish culture and trying to become more fluent in Spanish kind of took the priority for me. And I was at a point in my life, like I mentioned, at 24, 25, I wanted to be in the hub of water polo, the heartbeat. I wanted to be there in Hungary. And at 25, 26, I wanted to start preparing myself for things outside of water polo a bit more, and be able to really tap into my culture of, being Puerto Rican, being Spanish, and see what that was like. And fortunately, at the same time, I was going to get the opportunity to play with other amazing players. And I think after playing with, people like Arita or Gabby in UVSE, I realized, wow, I can learn so much from these other players, from my competitors. And how lucky am I to get that opportunity in Hungary? And then now I could get that opportunity with Ani Espar, Micah Garcia, Bea Ortiz, like some of the all-time greats. And so for me, that transition was really, really difficult. Like, I don't think people understand how hard, as a young athlete, you don't understand it's like a business, especially as an American. You're like so team focused. But once I made it to Sabadell, it felt so right. I was able to focus on those things outside of water polo, which is really why I went there, and tap into my culture, only speak Spanish, prepare myself for business opportunities in the future. And at the same time, really develop those friendships and relationships that I have with those women now from, for example, the Spanish national team, and learn from them. Like, I love the way that they all play individually and as a team. I learned how to kind of play in small areas that, ticky-tacky way. Like, how do you pass it to Micah Garcia on a 6-on-5 when there's 3 people on her? But they still somehow figure it out, and Ani I've been playing against my whole life, kind of like a Kylie Neuschel. And she, similar with like Arita and Kylie, is one of my favorite players to play with of all time. And so that was really special to go there and get that experience to be, like I said, it all comes back to little things I've been saying, to be amongst the best, strive to be amongst the best. And I was able to do that there and really learn and add new tools to my tool set as a player, as well as outside of the pool. So yeah, it was a really amazing experience. And looking back, for example, if I had stayed in Hungary, COVID happened and I would have never gotten to be a part of that team. I would have never had the opportunity to be a part of that that amazing team that similar to Rio, it looked fun, and that was really special. And I'm really grateful for that year.
Yeah. We have a bit of an awkward question.
Yeah.
And I can't actually find the name, but it's you. Obviously, you're a close knit group, but do you ever worry that things will get awkward given the nature of you being American and them being Spanish? You said earlier about the heartbreak that you saw your sister go through, and that when you saw it yourself, and you felt to be denied of an Olympic gold.
Yeah.
And the USA national team are very much the bogey team for the Spaniards, many of whom are your very, very close friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does it feel? I mean, we're not blaming you for them, not, and I'm sure they don't see it like that, but it's a bit of it's an elephant in the room, isn't it? You've always been there to deny them of what is your dream and so many of their dreams.
Yeah. I mean, Spain and US on the women's side has been a long-time rival. I mean, that's the first team we played in an Olympic final. They ended up beating us the next year at Worlds. And then we've seemed to find each other in a lot of big moment games. And I think that's what happens with, the word rival is technically in women's water polo, everyone is really competitive. You think about the top teams, Spain, Hungary, Russia, US, Australia, Italy, Greece, like the list goes on. It's not like just 3. And so everyone's kind of a rival in a way because everyone is so good. But with Spain, we've met them in finals. We've met them in crossovers. So over 10, 12 years, it's been this rivalry. And I think it's a beautiful rivalry, to be honest. Especially because a lot of players have still been around since the beginning. But for sure, it's definitely uncomfortable. I mean, I went back to Sabadell this year after the Olympics, and those girls, like, they are my family. They're not just friends. When you go abroad, I don't have my family there. I don't have as much as I'm more comfortable in maybe living in Spain than at first. I mean, I'm really comfortable being in Hungary now, but you're still not comfortable. You don't have your friends. You don't have your routine. You don't have your way of life. You fully dive into their culture. That's how I believe you should do it, I guess, is if you're going to live abroad and you're in their territory, I eat their food. I speak their language. I play the way they play. And so going back this year, I knew that was kind of in the back of my head. And I'm sure, there were probably days or things that maybe I accidentally said, or that would have been hard for them, or which are never intentional, or I'm wearing like a US shirt or something, and maybe that frustrates them. But I will say, no matter what, it's competition. And so you're always going to feel that. I feel the same way. Like we, even in playoffs, we're playing against, this is something I learned in Spain, actually, that I would say as Americans, we're not very good at, is we were losing to Mataró, for example, the entire season. They were a much better season team than we were. And then I'd go see Ani Esbar the next day, and I think that's something that Spain does a really good job of, whether they like doing it or not. I don't know, but I would say those girls are really good at saying, here is water polo and here is outside of water polo. And Americans, we're so competitive, and it's, we want to win so bad that sometimes that separation is very blurred. Whereas in Spain, something I noticed, and not to say that it's easy for them, I'm sure it's really difficult, but they do, and I have a lot of respect for them on this. They do a really good job of saying, hey, you're my friend. I respect you. I'm going to beat you in the pool. I'm going to give you my best. I hate you in the pool, whatever it is. But outside of the pool, you're my friend. Yeah. And I respect you. And that's something I think they do an amazing job of. So whether or not it's easy for them, they show it really well. Yeah. So I don't know if it was necessarily awkward. Maybe if you asked them, but
my Spanish really isn't that good.
But I'm just really grateful to be with them. Yeah. Honestly, they're a great group.
And actually, from the outside, and I mean, we did speak to Simone about this earlier on when she was on the podcast.
Yeah.
We see that you go out for a meal with Annie. Even though Mataró and Sabadell have been locking horns all season. You went and
Yeah.
saw
Or Vivian. Like, I'd
Vivian,
go
your
see
old
Vivian
teammate.
Sevenich, who I played with in UVSE, and she's one of my closest friends. And we'd be playing against each other, and like, I'm a defender, she's a center. Like, you better believe we're getting after it. And then after the game, it's like, hey, want to grab a beer? So
it's really nice, actually. I think it's better than being, acrimonious and all the rest of it. Just briefly, you've brought it up. Obviously, another league title for Sabadell. You were pushed all the way, very much all the way. Not just by Mataró, who beat you in all the finals, basically the cup finals. I just have to take their side for a little bit. Obviously Mediterranean were really, really tough, and the force that final playoff game. Is this the toughest season league season you've had, and is the level improving, and can you notice?
No, I definitely think the level really improved in Spain. That's why I said I think I've been really fortunate with where I played. Like, even at UVSE in Hungary, I think the league is really strong. Similar in Spain, all the teams are really good. You have a good bandwidth of strong, good teams, and you could see that. I mean, Mataró destroyed us in terms of season long. We were able to get the win at the end. And that's kind of was our focus at that point. But I mean, they were better than us for pretty much the whole season in terms of our relationship. They were almost like our kryptonite in a sense, right? Yeah, we struggled to beat them. They are a great team, and no, it definitely speaks, I think, to the level of Spain water polo right now. And I think for me, in terms of a season, this was definitely the toughest. Similarly to what I was mentioning about the Olympics, this season was really hard for me because I have been in rehab. Like I mentioned at the Olympics, I was being held together by a string. And so post-Olympics, my body kind of shut down as it needed to. And I was trying to do what I could to prepare my shoulders and think long-term for possibly Paris and my health. And so I thought that I would be better by January or February of the season. And it ended up being a really difficult season for me. People would come up and be like, why aren't you shooting? Or like, why isn't Maggie doing this? And, little do they know I was just trying to keep my body together and be smart. And so I definitely played a different role on Sabadell this year. Sure you noticed, but that was kind of the good thing at the end. Unfortunately, Micah was injured and couldn't play. And obviously that's a huge player for any team, but especially for our team. And that kind of forced me to play set and kind of play 2 meters a lot, which was probably the best thing for my shoulder, and play a bit more in that inside game. So it was really fun, but you said it right. We were pushed to the limit. We were exhausted. And I know, for example, like Mediterranean and Mataró, we were all exhausted. The season was so crammed because of the schedule, and probably not the best thing for injuries. And you could see it by the end, but no, it was really fun because I feel like by the time the playoffs came, our team just said, all right, we just got to do whatever we need to do. And it wasn't about, even for example, like my whole season, it was, kind of doing what I could with my shoulder and kind of frustrated at myself that I wasn't better yet. And all these things. We had gotten second at Champions League. Like, we just couldn't figure it out. We couldn't get there. And I think by the time playoffs came, we didn't care about getting there anymore. We just said, you know what? For some reason, we keep having we have injuries the whole season. Things keep happening. We're not figuring it out how to get first. We just need to play. Like, do whatever you need to do, and let's get that win. And I think, honestly, that was probably the best we had played. We played a lot more gritty. We played with a lot of heart. I was dead after doing, going to set, 2 meter tee, whatever it was. So it was really fun, honestly. And it was good to end on a win after a really tough season. So really grateful for that, and was proud of our team to be able to get it done, especially missing, Micah and Marja and all of that. So
yeah. 2 massive losses, but you still managed to get the win, and it was the whole season as a whole, but also those playoffs were a lot of fun to watch, and obviously a great advert for the sport and women's sport, I think, as well. And we do have a slight question about that in part 2. But just before we take a break, I just want to ask you and hear about your project with 6'8". You are crushing it. You're absolutely smashing it. Obviously, you are a co-founder alongside someone that's not that well known, 5-time Olympian Tony Azevedo, who is long overdue a trip to this podcast. But just very briefly, can you explain to the listeners what 6'8" is all about, how it came about, summarize your work, what you're trying to achieve? A bit of advertising.
Yeah, so Tony and I founded 6'8", back in around 2018, and our mission is to accelerate growth and exposure in developing sports. And the main sport we're focusing on is our love, water polo. And as Total Water Polo understands, we need help. Water polo is in the data dark ages. We're behind in a lot of aspects, similar with exposure, especially for women. Right. 6'8" is here to accelerate that growth and exposure and help water polo get to the next level, truly revolutionize the sport. And so what we created at 6'8" is a platform. We're a live scoring platform and software that connects live stats and analytics directly to the athletes and directly to the fans. So, it's actually something that we're looking into patenting as well, is being able to provide athletes that storyline, provide athletes that resume, give them history. And then from the sports side, discover trends, say what's happening. How many Olympics games has Ani Esbar played in? How many, caps does Maddie Musselman have? Who is the next Simone Vanderkratz, right? What is that storyline? And 6'8" Sports is here to help track that storyline and deliver it to not only fans, but to individual athletes. So it's been really fun. I love being an entrepreneur. It's what I studied at Stanford. I'm obviously really passionate about water polo and helping people achieve their dreams. And 6'8" Sports is, our mission is to do just that. So hopefully, people have been seeing us, at FINA games or college games. You'll see our platform. The 6'8" Game Desk is our way to eliminate pen and paper and fully take statistics and analytics to the next level in our sport. Whether you're at a beach water polo game in the middle of nowhere and don't have Wi-Fi, we can be there, or, at a big tournament. And immediately after a game, any stat that's taken is directly correlated to the athletes in that game. And those athletes have control of recording that. So it's been really, really fun. We're enjoying it, but it's a lot of hard work. You understand you're a pro athlete and you're an owner of a company, and, it's fun. It's a lot of work. And I hope 6'8" is out there for more people to see moving forward.
You just said that, something you just said there, I just want to touch on. You won't admit it, because, the best don't, but you are one of the best players in the world, and it seems reductive for me to even say that you've obviously got an active playing career. How do you balance being a successful entrepreneur, so chiefly manifested in 6'8"? How do you balance that with training twice a day, 7 days a week, and going home and actually relaxing or walking the dog, or
I do want a dog, but not yet. Yeah, I think most athletes, we've been dealing with balance our whole life. You think about, you've been doing school and sport. You went to college and did sport. You're playing professional and maybe still studying or have a job, or even the balance you have of being a professional or Olympic athlete and dealing with your social life and still giving time to your family and friends. So balance has always been really important to me. I do, that was the reason I wanted to go to Stanford, was to say, hey, I want to be the best in water polo, but I also want to strive to be amongst the best, right, in academics as well. And so that balance is a habit that's been built over time. But I won't say it's easy. It's really difficult. And that's why I'm really grateful to have, for example, a Tony Azevedo as a co-founder, because he's really supportive of me still chasing that Olympic dream. He wants me to go to 5. I don't think that'll happen. He doesn't want me to beat him, either. And he's also really supportive of women in sport. And I think that's something that not a lot of people might know about him. But he has been one of the biggest supporters for women in sport. And he knows that that's really important to me. So to have a co-founder like him and his wife, Sarah Azevedo, who allow me to also chase that dream and are flexible, is really important. And then, for example, to have my boyfriend, Bobby Connor, and my family and my teammates who say, you know what, it's cool to be able to support you in these different ways, but it's a team effort, and you look at Maddie Musselman, I don't even know if she mentioned this, but she wants to be a doctor, and there's so many people out there. Vivian, is going to be a lawyer. Vivian, all of these pro athletes you see on the TV as a water polo player, you see them in the cap, but all of them have other things, and I think that's something that's really, really special about women athletes is you don't see it. They don't get the recognition for it, but they're doing it. Even moms, all of the moms, I can't even imagine. I know Russia has a couple moms at Hungarian Center, had a kid, how did they do that and be a mom, amazing. So, we all have a team behind the team, and that's really kind of been how I've been able to handle that balance. Not easy, but really fortunate to have the people around me that support me and help along the way.
Lovely. Look, we wish you the best of luck with 6-8 and obviously everything that you and Tony are doing, and we obviously are really supportive of that. Maggie, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back for some quick questions.
Cool.
Welcome back to part 2 of the Total Waterpolo Podcast, and this is the part where we ask Maggie Steffens, our guest, questions that you've sent in on social media. Maggie, if you've ever listened to our podcast before, you'll know we ask the same question every week to all our guests to start with. Who is your Total 7 team? Who's your ultimate team of players you've played with, played against, never played with? They can be retired, they can be past, present, whatever it is. You have to
got to pick.
And yeah, you have to.
Okay. This one's always hard for me because naturally I just want to choose my US team. But what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to do no Americans because I know it's not the total 7 of all time, but to be honest, I feel really lucky. I'm pretty sure I get to play with the best players ever. Or I'll try. I'll see if I can do a little bit of both.
All right, let's have it.
So, gosh, yeah. See, the problem is if I do Americans, I'll just be Ashley in goal, Kimmy Craig in set, Kylie Nuschel, Brenda 4-5 side, Maddie Musselman, Rachel Fatal up top. That's my American group.
Yeah.
Mel Seidemann at the 3. So that's my US group.
Well, look, you've got the honourable mentions in already.
Yeah,
so they won't be offended if you don't include them.
Exactly. And now I'm going to do outside of the US. So I think I would do Ani Esbar, and I would do Ani Esbar on the right side. I would do Rita Kasei and Proko on the left side. I would do probably Hannah Buckling from Australia in 2-meter D. I would then do, let me think, Spain, Italy. I mean, you might have to also do a Tanya DiMario over on that 4-5 side. And then in set, I mean, you have to do a Micah Garcia. For some reason, I think an Asamaki would be really fun in there because she would just tear things up and play 32 minutes. Yeah, I would probably say around that group. Bea Ortiz probably as well. But yeah, it's hard because I've been playing for a long time, and so right now my mind is thinking a bit more of like newer players.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah,
of course,
it's hard. I can't intermix US, and I can't pick a 7 with US players too because I've played with both, so it's too hard.
Okay, well, we kind of have 7. We kind of have like 20.
That's my typical. If
fine.
You're going to ask me that, what you're going to get.
Yeah, to be honest, no one ever picks 7. They pick 3 or 4 for each position. So, but yeah, some great players in there. It's a good team. We are going to ask the next question, which is from Martin Benchur, a former. He's now UVSE's coach. Was he there at the time when you were? Was he the assistant?
No, head coach.
He was the head coach. Yeah, I need to get my facts right. Anyway, he's asked. He says hi, by the way, and he says, "Who is the hardest player you've ever had to play against?"
Ooh. Okay, I know who it is. No, I actually do know who it is. So obviously, I think there's so many players that are really difficult. Like even for example, Rita's like there's people that I'm like have to mentally really prep. I'm like, all right, this game you're guarding her. But I'm gonna say when I first joined the national team as a young one, Adam kind of made me to be a 2-meter defender. And a lot of times I was kind of the second defender. So I would mark against the, like a post up type player. And on Holland, Ifka was like this, like 7 foot, in my mind, she was like 7 feet long. She'd post up from the right side. I don't say numbers because in America, they're different than Europe. So I don't want to confuse people.
Yeah.
She would post up from the right side. And like most of my first 2 years was just trying to figure out how to guard someone that big and smart and intelligent and like not get kicked out early. So mentally that was always really, really difficult for me. So yeah, I know that's kind of like a throwback. I think she retired back in, after, like in my first quad after that, when they didn't make it in 2012. So, kind of random. Like, I know that's not necessarily like recent. There's obviously tons of recent, but mentally, I think to my first 2 years and being like, oh my God, how do I guard this?
It's a different answer, and it's a good answer. It's you personally. We're asking you. So don't go with what other people think. This is a really interesting question, and I know everyone listening to this podcast wants to hear what you have to say about this. Benoit _ it sounds ominous, I know. Benoit _ Gourand says, after spending so much time in Europe, why do you think American women water polo, is so dominant? Now, this is the age-old, the US college system versus the European professional debate. Now, you are very well placed to give an assessment, and we all want to hear it.
Yeah. So to be honest, like you said, I've been really lucky to play kind of in both systems. And I think there's pros and cons to both. Like after I play in Europe, I'm like, no wonder they win so much of this, or no wonder they're so good at this, this, and this. I think I'm not going to say there's like some magic sauce or anything, right? Because also it's not like the US has been like this forever. There was also times when, Holland won like 4 World Cups in a row or whatever it was, right? So there's a lot more history, but I will say to me, it's the culture of training and the culture of competition in the States. Kind of like what I was mentioning earlier, even with that ability to separate in Europe, I think is a pro, and they do. And it's not every country, right? And it's individual level as well. But in the States, we're always thinking of winning. It's just that kind of American dream in a sense. And when we train, the culture is you train like it's a gold medal game, even if it's 6 a.m. in the morning and there's no gold medal for another opportunity for 2 years. So
sorry to interrupt, but when you said earlier when you went to Hungary, the beating heart of water polo, they train like mad. Do they not train like that? You've been in Spain for a few years. Do they not really train this? Is it the intensity?
They train.
Is that
Yeah,
what it is?
No, I'm not talking about the physical part. So, I mean, playing in Hungary, like every team is fit. That's not necessarily the part I'm talking about, because everyone trains really hard. Everyone trains for hours. Everyone trains, tough. What I'm talking about is the mental aspect of when we train, we are mentally, like as a whole, thinking about competition. And it's not just at the pool, like when we leave the pool as well. And I also think the way that Adam has helped create the culture of our team is we are one entire team. So I think that has really helped us in terms of, you get to the highest level, you can't just have 6 or 7 players and hope your bench isn't in as much. For us, it's like our bench is still could be the starting group, and the starting group could be on the bench. You know what I'm saying? So I would say that it's just the culture of, like, the American culture is just so different. And I think there's a lot of cons, honestly, to the American culture and the way we do things as well. I personally I just try to focus on the pros of both. But after living in Europe, I'm like, why do we do this in the States? Or in the States, I'm like, oh, I wish we did this a little bit more in Europe, right? So I think that, to me, not necessarily the physical culture, because every team works hard. They're Olympians. Like, everyone pushes themselves past the limit. There's no doubt about that. No matter where you come from, you are Olympians. But in the States, I would just say the American culture, we're so goal driven. Like, you think about Americans, it's like, go to school. Once you finish school, go to college. Once you finish college, get a job. Once you get a job, you got to get promoted. Then you got to get married. Like, we are constantly hitting or attempting to hit goals. And although I do think that after living in Europe, I think there's a lot of cons to that in terms of loving life and, enjoying life. And I think enjoying water polo as well. You see a lot of Americans retire probably earlier than Europeans, right? So I would say that, like, American culture of goals and reaching goals and constantly pushing yourself to, like, what's next, right? And I think there's cons in that as well, but that, to me, more on, like, the mental side of it. And then, like I mentioned with Adam earlier, he's created a really good culture around teamwork, and you can see that in the way we play. We play very unified, and we share the ball a lot. It's not about one player or 2 players. At least on the U.S. women's side, you see us sharing the ball a lot. We have a lot of assists. Everyone can kind of do a little bit of everything. And I think that makes us really dangerous, because it's hard to choose one person. It's like, wait, I don't want to fall off Rachel Fatal, but I also don't want to fall off Maddie Musselman, but we also need to guard Ariane Set. Oh no, here's Mel Seidemann. Like, it's really difficult to choose. And when the ball is moving around, we have a shared leadership and a shared responsibility on the American culture team. And that's just a testament to that, like, teamwork part of it. So I would say that's kind of the main difference. Like I said, there's a reason I still play in Europe. Like, I love the way that they play and train. So there's good and bad to both. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does make sense. Yeah, it makes sense. We've got a question here, and this is, I guess you have to be quite honest about this, but what are you not good at? We obviously see, a
lot of things.
Water polo, world-class athlete, mature businesswoman, entrepreneur. But what I mean, maybe water polo wise, but also just maybe out of that. What briefly do you think that you need to improve on?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, this is really simple. And this is probably another American thing as well, is you're constantly looking at ways to improve. And I wouldn't be playing the sport if I didn't think I had a lot more to learn. And I talk about that. That's why I go to Europe, is so I can learn and improve on things that I need to get better at. So in a sense, like, the things that you're not good at are not necessarily what you want to focus on, but they're always in the back of your head. So for example, I'm definitely not like the fastest. So I'm constantly working on my speed. I've been able to learn. I'm fast, but you have to be able to guard Hungarians and Russians on the counterattack, and on Esbar, on Sabrina Vandersloot. Like, you got to be able to keep up. I would say another thing is just differentiating my shot. I think a lot of the world knows I love to catch and shoot. I love to position myself early, and that was one of the reasons I went to Hungary, was to learn how to kind of differentiate little things that I do. I've been playing a long time. People can read. So, I think that's why Rita, for example, is so difficult to guard. And she's obviously, to the question earlier, one of the hardest players to guard, because you don't know what she's going to do, right? So it's hard to kind of read. So I'm also always working on that. I'm a strong player. I have strong legs. That's why I'm a 2-meter defender. But, that's why I always really admire the way Kylie Nuschel played, because she can play really light in the water. And that's something I'm always working on too. Like, I'm physical. I like to get after it. And that's something I'm always working on for, like, drive defense, things like that, is how to play lighter in the water. So I can, like a Bayer Ortiz, so you can cover a lot of water, keep yourself out of, contact and getting close. So always working on my core and stuff like that to be able to work on that. I mean, I could honestly go on, keep going. 2-meter defending in center is something I'll probably be doing a lot in this next squad. And so with that, I know I can push from behind, but I'm constantly working on how to, refront in 2-meter D and not lose sight of the ball. That's something I tend to do a lot. Adam, I know if Adam was on this podcast, he would say my assist to turnover ratio, I play a little risky sometimes on offense. I really like to thread the ball to my teammates. So I read the game really fast. And so sometimes I'm a little too fast, and I'll tend to get turnovers because of that. And clearly I could go on. There are so many things, and I'm never shy to admit those.
You need to hype yourself up a little bit more sometimes.
This is what sport is about, right? Like, you're constantly working on your strengths, but you need to understand your weaknesses. And that doesn't mean I focus on that. It's not, my whole life isn't like binoculars at my weaknesses. I just understand they're there, and I know how to ask for help. Good. Right. Like, and I think that's really important.
Good. On this same idea, we have like 4 or 5 questions. They're basically the same, but just before I ask the question, I've heard you say several times, podcasts, I've seen it written down, that the biggest room in your house is the room for improvement.
Yep.
In that spirit, and that's kind of your mantra kind of thing, we've got questions about advice for young players. Amsperko, advice for young players aspiring to become the player you are. Marek_Koricina, any shooting tips? Svoron Matrik, how to improve the accuracy of shot. Milicevic, Keith, blah, blah. It goes on. Obviously, they're all, what tips generally would you give to players wanting to improve? And when I mean that, when you turn up to training and you want to improve something, you obviously find out what you want, what you target it. But what do you actually do physically? What do you tell yourself mentally? Do you, you experimenting? Do you speak with your coaches? Because if a coach has, okay, today we're doing man up. Actually, I think my man up is actually okay, but I want to work on my defending the pit or something like that. Can you maybe explain your process for improving?
Yeah, I think that quote says it really well, and I truly believe that the biggest room in your house is room for improvement, and I think that's where it starts. I think similarly to the question you asked me, you have to be okay with improvement. You have to be okay with self-growth. You have to be okay saying, there is so much I can do to develop. And I think once you're able to accept that and say, hey, the biggest room in my house is room for improvement, and I want to live in that room. I like living there. And a lot of people don't like living there because obviously it's better, like you even mentioned to me, it's better to feel hyped up and talk about all the positives, but you have to be okay. Not saying you have to like it, but you have to be okay living in that space, living in that room, and seeing if you can even make it bigger, right? And so that would be kind of my first piece of advice, is figuring out how to be okay living in a room of improvement. My second thing would be, and this is kind of what I was saying about the difference with America in terms of like mental culture, I guess. But one thing that I always advise to kids, and this is kind of for me how I had that moment at the Olympics where I mentioned the whistle blew and I just was playing water polo, is when you want to improve in something, you can't just practice it like it's practice. You need to practice it like you're in a game, because that's a habit. That is something that you are what you do in practice is what you will do in a game. And so what I would do is, if, let's say you want to work on your accuracy, like that person asked, or 2-meter defending, first watch. And this is kind of encompassing a lot of things I've said, but pick someone you want to learn from, or 3 people, right? Watch them, watch video. If they're on your team, watch them, and then practice it. Like, even if you don't have anybody, or at home, if you want to work on different wrist releases, right? Like, practice it at home. Then when you get to a practice, and like in your example, man up, I want to get better in man up, put yourself mentally in a game situation. So before you get in the pool, or maybe, for example, before you're doing a drill, don't just do the drill. Don't just practice the drill. Live in that drill. And by doing that, naturally, you're going to play with a little bit more energy. You're going to play with a bit more of game speed. And if you make a mistake, you're making it at a game speed level, in a moment that could happen. And so you have to be able to say, okay, I'm playing at game speed. If I make a mistake, I can now be resilient because I've done it in practice. I've done this before. And that is where confidence comes from. Confidence does not come, and it could be some of it, but it does not come from your coaches or somebody saying you're good. It comes from you preparing and having the confidence in yourself. Then you feel more confident to try it in a game and be resilient with it. So I think that would be my biggest piece of advice, because obviously they asked about like shooting and all these different pieces of it. But my piece of advice would be okay living in a room of improvement, be okay being there. Doesn't mean you have to like it. 2, watch and mimic, and don't be shy to do that, and do it at home. Don't just do it at practice. You have to be willing to do things away from the pool. You have to be willing to do the extra, right? Because that's how you're going to improve. And then 3rd, do it at game speed, mentally, physically, emotionally. So when you practice, whether it's a 6-on-5 or a drill, like if you're just doing a shot blocking drill off of a wall and you're doing 1 lap, you should the coach should see you and think, wow, that's how they're going to look in a game, right? That's how you improve. That's how you get better. And that's how you gain confidence to actually do it in a game. So those would be my main 3 points. And in terms of like little tricks, great thing about water polo is you can always go underwater, right? So if you need to imagine yourself or put yourself somewhere, take a breath, go underwater and tell like, okay, tied game. I'm really tired. I need to do well on this 6-on-5, or I need to get this shot block, right? Like, put yourself there. Or before a shot blocking drill, you're just doing laps. Just remind yourself, like, hey, if I want to get better, I need to actually mimic real life. I need to mimic real game, So it's not going to be as easy as just coming over my hips. Someone's probably grabbing my wrist. So I need to be able to fight off somebody grabbing my wrist before I go over my hips. So make it game-like mentally and physically. But those would be my 3 general pieces of advice in terms of improvement.
Honestly, I mean, I could listen to you talk about it all day, and I'm just glad that we're basically offering world-class advice for free. Really, really good.
Well, that's why I love Total Waterpolo for this. Like, you guys have done such a great job with like that exposure of athletes, and we really appreciate it. And athletes want to give back too. And I love hearing from other athletes. Like I said, I listen to these, Rebecca Parks. I'm like, whoa, she's one of my best friends, but there's things I've never heard from that.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate that as well, like what you guys are doing for the sport.
I mean, I will ask, if we have time, one last question. But you said about watching that. I have it on good authority. You frequently message Rita and ask her. You've asked her before to send you videos of her shooting. Is that made up, or is that actually true?
No, it's true.
I'm not saying that isn't a bad thing, but I'm just saying, like,
no, it's true. I remember especially during quarantine, she and before quarantine, she does a really good job of posting video. I mean, like I said, I have girl crushes on a lot of athletes, and I would love to play with more. There's girls on the Russian team, like I mentioned, Proka. Like, there's people I would love to play with. But yeah, no, definitely, I have reached out to Rita and asked her to send me shots that she does in the pool. During quarantine, I asked her to send me stuff that she's doing at home to stay in shape, and also through 6'8" and just being like a mentor, it's helpful to expose her to more athletes, and she's super knowledgeable. I've asked Vivian and other people just to help with that and the mentoring part. But no, definitely I have no shame in reaching out to my players who I admire and saying, hey, help me out.
Yeah. Can I just say, it wasn't intended to embarrass. It was just to make a point.
No, I'm not embarrassed. I'm not embarrassed at all.
No, if the world's best female player and the all-time Olympic goal scorer is reaching out to a former teammate and an opponent more often than not nowadays, why can't you? And I know...
don't be shy to ask for help, you know?
Prokofieva puts loads of stuff on YouTube, for example.
Oh my God. There are things that Proko does on Instagram, and I'm like, amazing. This is why she's so good. And then I get in the pool and I'm like, okay, I'm going to try that. I'm not as good as her, but let me see if I can try. So no, I have a lot of respect for the women in the sport right now. And there's a reason they're the best. And, like I said, don't be shy to learn from the best. Be amongst them.
Yeah, I totally agree. Do I have time for one more question?
Sure.
So this question is quite sensitive, but also I think it's a really important question. Do you think the women's game is given as much attention as it deserves?
No.
And I suspect
it's not a difficult question.
No, it's not. But obviously, it requires a bit of a follow up. I agree. And so, if I, God forbid, I was the head of FINA, and I said, Maggie, I've come into, sit down in this lovely conference room that we have, and I said, I want to improve the women's game. I want to make it more accessible to young girls, and I want to increase the number of. I know in Greece and Spain and out in Hungary, there's lots of people coming to watch, but I want to increase the number of views on YouTube. What can I do? And so if that was a situation where a hypothetical situation, a horrible situation where I'm in charge of the world's aquatic governing body, what would you answer?
A lot of things, definitely a long list. But I think in order to have big change, you need to have little change first. Because as we've seen in sport and in life, some things can be overwhelming. And if you go at it too fast, nothing gets done, right? So I think even what you're doing now would be my first step. If I were looking at how to change, I would ask the athletes. I would ask the other females in the sport. I would ask coaches and say, hey, what works in your country and what does not, right? So first I would ask and learn from what's happening now. And I think each country, I think Spain and Hungary and Italy are doing things better than the States. I think the States are doing certain things better than Australia, and Australia is doing certain things better than wherever. So first, I would ask current and past alumni and coaches what has been good and what has been bad. Then from that, I think we can create, a problem-solving board. And I think one of the main things that our sport needs, and this is the same mission as Total Waterpolo, right? And even what I was mentioning with 6'8" and just with women is exposure. So if you do want to grow the sport at the young level, they need to see it. They need to see it. And I think that's what's been difficult with water polo, and especially on the women's side, is if you don't see women's water polo, it's hard to imagine yourself there. It's hard to see a future there. And guess what? Kids are going to diverge into other sports or leave the sport early. In the States, for example, after college, there's not much opportunity. You either go abroad or you do a little masters or something, or you make the national team. There's no leagues. So how do we create more opportunity, which will then increase exposure of women playing that sport? You saw it probably in women's soccer. Once women's soccer was on TV more, they did more live events where kids could come. Membership grew. And so I think that would be one of my first real steps. And not big, not all of a sudden create these new leagues or events, but start small in each little zone. And at FINA event, make it easier for people to watch. Pay a little bit of extra money to put it on a mainstream channel. Get it on ESPN, right? Get it not just at the Olympics, right? So create more exposure so people can see it, so they believe they can be a part of it, right? And I think just that little thing can help. And now, not that happens a lot in men's water polo, but it happens more. And so I think a part of that as well would just be, continuing to create that equal opportunity for women, whether it's the same amount of teams at the Olympics or not just always having women's tournaments in places that it's hard to get to. Why not have the women's tournaments in beautiful places? Like, make it fun. Right? I joke. I'm like, why don't we have more tournaments in Puerto Rico? And I know that's totally different, but beach, sun, people want to travel there, make it vacation, and I get to watch the best players in the world. Like, let's get creative about that exposure, right? And not make it just a thing you go to. So clearly I have a lot of ideas. I really believe in the future of water polo. But I think the first steps are asking from whoever's making these decisions. And then we also, and this is what's been cool to play with like legendary players from Spain and Holland and Hungary and wherever, obviously the US. But we all believe that water polo we can do more. And so we also need to create change. We also need to take more action and speak. We as women need to speak. Right. And which is what I appreciate the women that you guys have had on your podcast. So yeah, I would ask and learn from those. Then from there, I would create more exposure on the high level and then slowly trickle down and create more opportunity on the low level. And if I had a lot of money, to be honest, I would donate a ton of money to each federation to start young learning to swim programs that involve a water polo ball. That's it. Donate a bunch of money to teach people how to swim, but instead of it being a swimming thing, there's a fun ball in it that obviously kids are going to love to be a part of. So start exposure at the top, donate, create some sort of nonprofit on the bottom that helps with water safety, but makes it fun with a water polo ball. And I think that could help us really, really increase the sport.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work to be done, but you are very much a massive role model in leading the way and groundbreaking, and the ideas are good, and I hope FINA and whoever are involved are up to it. Look, Maggie Steffens, I've loved every second of this, and I know it's gone on for a while, but it's been absolutely fantastic. You're an absolute baller. You're an inspiration, and it's been an absolute honor, and I'm sure we'll catch up again soon.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
That was unbelievable. That was incredible. So insightful. What an absolute honor to talk to such a superstar. I mean, you can tell she was so passionate about her family values, her teammates, working for the team, and at the core of it, just a desire to improve as a person, but as a player, a teammate, and I just loved every second of that. She's probably the greatest player of all time. and today, having spoken to her for an hour or two, I kind of understand why. I've kind of seen it. So look, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you've learned something. I hope you've been entertained. Look after yourselves, and we will be back next week.